Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Adam Lemerise, and with me is Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. A special shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Deshelle, and Robin. Thank you for investing in Grid Network. Link to our Patreon in the video description below. Please feel free to comment in the chat room below and ask any questions. Tonight we'll discuss the potential future of North Wilkesboro Speedway. NASCAR's rulebook gets stricter. Matt White's grid history update and a special preview of the season opener Formula E races in Saudi Arabia with a special guest from Formula E Zone. Let's get started discussing the North Wilkesboro update from SMI.
Yes, and as you just mentioned, Adam, very excited to speak with that special guest from Formula E Zone. He's actually in the chat room right now. Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone. Really excited to chat with you later on tonight and pick your brain about all things Formula E. But first things first, let's talk a little bit about North Wilkesboro Speedway. SMI CEO and President Marcus Smith has a vision of bringing back motorsports, concerts, and other entertainment options. In the return of a lost speedway known as North Wilkesboro, SMI received $18 million in funding to improve the infrastructure at the track. Smith said the future of North Wilkesboro is bright, calling it a great opportunity to revive this venue. His hope is to celebrate the history of North Wilkesboro Speedway and look forward to the future. Said North Wilkesboro is almost like Fenway Park. It's a baseball. Smith thinks some dreams can become a reality with funding coming from the state of North Carolina and the American Rescue Plan. Once the track renovations are complete, Smith said there's a possibility we could actually see a NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race someday at North Wilkesboro Speedway in the photos you just saw, courtesy of Perkins Eastman. Are you surprised that SMI is going all in to bring back one of the most historic lost speedways in NASCAR?
No, I'm not surprised. And I will say this: if a NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race does go to North Wilkesboro Speedway, I plan on being there. It's a track that has so much history on it. I believe Jeff Gordon won the last NASCAR Cup Series race there in the late 90s. So if this were to happen, a lot of fans, especially here in the mountains of North Carolina, are going to be really happy. It's a track where a legend named Junior Johnson knows about, and has known about for a long time. So to see this happening, it makes me very, very happy to see, and I hope it does happen going forward.
And I think it's really crazy we're actually having this conversation right now, Adam, because if you're on social media, you see race fans they've been talking for like the past decade online that North Wilkesboro Speedway has to come back, and everybody's like, look at the photos. Be like, this is a rundown track. It's a lost speedway. There's no chance North Wilkesboro Speedway is ever coming back. And I said the same thing myself. I said it's not possible. This racetrack is lost, and there's no hope in bringing it back. And then one day, Dale Earnhardt Jr. got some of his buddies in the NASCAR community together, and they went around the track and they cleaned it up where all the weeds were growing and all of that. They fixed it up so iRacing could come and scan the track. So, and at that point, we didn't expect that North Wilkesboro Speedway would ever return to a NASCAR schedule. We thought it was just going to turn into one of those lost speedways, as I mentioned. And if you haven't checked out Lost Speedways on Peacock, it's really good. Dale Earnhardt Jr. show, him and Matthew Dillon, they're traveling around the country to where these old racetracks used to be and telling about its history. Really enjoy that program on Peacock, Lost Speedways. But getting back to the point, the reason why iRacing was scanning the track is because it seemed like North Wilkesboro Speedway was going to be history, and if it was going to be history, they wanted it to last forever in the digital space, so NASCAR fans on iRacing could race at one of NASCAR's most iconic short tracks from back in the day. But now it looks like North Wilkesboro Speedway may become a huge part of NASCAR's future, which is really surprising. Is a really great thing that North Carolina, the state, and the American Rescue Plan from the federal government been dedicated to fixing up this place and potentially hosting a NASCAR truck race one day. And I think that would be really exciting to see the truck series racing at North Wilkesboro Speedway. And maybe if it's a huge success, potentially bring the Cup Series back to the North Carolina Mountain. I know all of the folks up there in Wilkes County would be glad to have racing back up there in the NC Mountains.
And also, Lost Speedways, they did a show on the old Asheville Motor Speedway over in Asheville, North Carolina, and I had the opportunity to actually go see a few races there. Um, you know, the Presley family in Asheville, it has a lot of strong connections to the historic Asheville Motor Speedway. Now it's actually a public park. So, um, you know, when North Wilkesboro Speedway comes back, I think everyone in NASCAR will be happy. And now, switching to news from down under in Australia, the Newcastle Street Circuit will no longer host a season opener for the Repco Supercars Championship. Instead, the 2022 Supercar season will kick off at Sydney Motorsports Park under the lights for the Sydney Super Night. Last year, Supercars returned here after a month-long break due to the pandemic and raced here for several weeks. And the Repco Newcastle 500 has been postponed to a later date. And the Supercar season gets underway in Sydney March 4th through the 6th. And now, here's Kobe with some NASCAR news about the rule book getting stricter.
A stricter rulebook is definitely a major understatement. And on Monday, NASCAR dropped the hammer big time, unveiling a new three-tiered penalty system in the NASCAR Cup Series, ranging from L1 to L3, starting with the L1 penalties, which are for lesser violations, such as failing to meet minimum weight requirements in post-race team source parts, not meeting the minimum weight rules, but not rising to a higher level penalty and failures in the submission and approval process of parts. An L1 penalty may result in losing 20 to 75 points, 1 to 10 playoff points, suspending one crew member for 1 to 3 races, and fines ranging between $25,000 to $100,000. L2 violations are modifications to single source next gen parts not rising to L3 level infractions, violations of engine seal requirements, unapproved altercations to the engine control system wiring, and use of unapproved onboard electronics. An L2 penalty means the potential of losing 75 to 120 points, a deduction of 10 to 25 playoff points, suspending one or two crew members for 4 to 6 races, and fines ranging between $100,000 to $250,000. Now, L3 violations, which are the most severe penalties, the worst of the worst. These violations include counterfeiting or modifying single source next gen parts, engine infractions, and performance enhancement, ECU or EFI violations, modifying tires and or fuel, and violations of private team testing policy. L3 penalties could mean losing a whopping 120 to 180 points, a loss of 25 to 50 playoff points, 1 or 2 crew members receiving a 6 race suspension, fines ranging between $250,000 to $500,000, and regardless of wins, points, or other qualifying criteria, NASCAR may decide to ban a driver and team entirely from the playoffs. And this is something we have never seen in NASCAR's history so far. And repeat high level offenders could result in the entire team and driver being suspended for one race. Adam, are you surprised at NASCAR's new penalty system? Is this severe?
Yeah, I am. When I saw this, I couldn't believe it. Back in the day, you had teams, that were, getting close to the gray matter without cheating. Now with these rules, there is no gray matter. It's called you get caught cheating, you're it's going to be like you mentioned, Gobi. There's several penalties now, and with this new next gen car, I don't think you will be able to cheat. But NASCAR teams will go out there, to the finest line possible, to get the most horsepower and most downforce that they can. Um, I don't think, like you said, Kobe, we've never seen this in NASCAR history. So it's going to be interesting to see what all develops this year on the NASCAR Cup Series season.
And actually, NASCAR teams really don't like it when you say that they're cheating. They like you to use the phrase it in the way that they're pushing the limits as far as they can to make the cars go as fast as they can possibly make them. But as we've seen in the past, we've seen drivers drivers and teams push the issue too much with the cars, and they've been handed some pretty significant penalties. But this new system, we've never seen this at all before, and pretty much, as you were saying, Adam, I don't see any teams pushing the limit now that far because it could be absolutely devastating towards their playoff status. And I was most shocked by the fact was if you get an L3 penalty, they may ban a driver from the playoffs altogether. A postseason ban that is like really out there to me. I didn't expect that NASCAR would be willing to come down this hard, but it shows with this new next gen car they want to make sure that is an absolute even playing field, so all the teams and drivers will have an equal opportunity to go out there and compete for wins. So no team is gaining an unfair advantage. And before we move on to the next segment, have a comment in the chat room from Edward Hunting, who's waiting patiently for his segment to come up. He said it's a shame to lose Newcastle, a really tough street circuit in the supercars, but hopefully Sydney is a good replacement. Yeah, at the end of last season, really interesting race an entire month long, almost the entire month of November, I believe, Sydney Motorsport Park, waiting
Yep.
for the Bathurst 1000. It was definitely quite a time. I wish they could have used different layouts at Sydney Motorsports Park rather than running the same layout over and over and over again. But luckily, when we got to the longer races at Sydney, that's when things really got interesting, and the sprint races were really tame for the most part. So definitely looking forward to getting the supercars season started up in March. Just too much time. And moving on, during the NFL divisional playoff game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers, it was announced that Tony Stewart will join the Fox Sports broadcast booth, calling the Busch Light Clash at the Daytona 500 alongside Mike Joy and Clint Boyer. With Jeff Gordon departing for a larger role at Hendrick Motorsports, Fox plans to rotate on-air talent throughout the 2022 season for the third broadcasting role per Adam Stern from the Sports Business Journal. Smoke and Boyer in the same booth calling a race together. Two big personalities that know how to make people laugh. Watch out. I'm not sure the world is prepared for that. Graphic courtesy of Stewart Haas Racing. Right there, the screen, as Tony Stewart said, to all the very first Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum and the Daytona 500 is an opportunity you don't pass up. So really looking forward to seeing what Tony Stewart has for us when he steps in the broadcast booth in just a couple of weeks' time. Next, here's Matt White with a with a grid history update.
Hi everybody, Matt White here from Grid History. Well, what a weekend that was of World Rally Championship action in Monte Carlo. Sebastian Loeb, the winner, his 80th World Rally Championship victory. The first for Ford for some time and the first of the new hybrid era. Congratulations to Seb and his new co-driver for the weekend, Isabel Gamish, who's the first female to get on a WRC podium for 9 years, and the first winner for even longer than that. So congratulations to them and everybody at M Sport for a terrific victory out the weekend. I mentioned Sebastian Loeb. He is the featurette of tomorrow's Grid History on grid_history on Twitter, and he was also the feature on Sunday as well. Plenty of Monty memories coming your way over on Grid History this week. Today it was Sam Bird winning the Formula E race in 2019 in Santiago. Talking of Formula E, of course, that's back this weekend. A race on Friday and a race on Saturday in Saudi Arabia. Plenty of coverage from the Grid team across the weekend, and it's the Rolex 24 at Daytona on Saturday. All 24 hours covered on the USRN network over on Mixler.com. So if you're out and about and want to keep in touch with what's happening in the race, download the Mixler app and search for the Ultimate Sports Radio Network. We'll have 24-hour coverage across Saturday and Sunday with myself, Matthew Gray, Seth Eves, and the rest of the team. Looking forward to being part of that. We'll talk to you next week to update you on more grid history and a look back at that Rolex 24.
Thank you, Matt. And now to some more NASCAR news. Kaulig Racing announced the schedule for the three drivers sharing the number 16 Chevrolet Camaro in this year's NASCAR Cup Series season. Last year's winner on the IMS road course, AJ Allmendinger, will kick things off at the Busch Light Clash at the LA Coliseum. The Dinger will run 16 races, mostly short tracks and road courses. Defending NASCAR Xfinity Series champion Daniel Hemrick will run 9 races, including this year's Daytona 500. The final 14 races go to Junior Motorsports NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Noah Gragson, who will get valuable cup time and experienced equipment. A good thing for a driver who is expected to be a potential for a full-time cup ride in 2023. Next, here's Kobe Lambeth with special guest Edward Hunter discussing the ABB Formula E season opener at Saudi Arabia.
We're only a couple of days away from the season opening weekend for the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship Season 8 on the streets of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for a doubleheader race weekend on Friday and Saturday for the Diriyah E-Prix. Now we have Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone joining us to preview the new season of Formula E racing. Ed, thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem, Kobe. It's great to be here.
You're really great to have you back and continuing our partnership with Formula E Zone for all the Formula E coverage out there. And let's jump straight into it. Looking at some of the changes over the offseason, manufacturer-backed factory teams, Audi and BMW, have departed Formula E, but they'll still have a presence, continuing to supply powertrains to Envision Racing and Andretti Autosport, respectively. On the driver's side of things, we have an ex-Formula 2 driver, Dan Ticktum, joining the grid full-time with NEO after his Formula 1 opportunities dried up, which the British driver completely acknowledged. Ticktum is replacing Tom Blomqvist, who left Formula E to join the Meyer Shank Race and Acura DPI program in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Ex-Alfa Romeo Formula 1 driver Antonio Giovinazzi is making the switch to Formula E with Dragon. Italian Jesus is ready to get electric. Max Gunther moves to Nissan, replacing Oliver Rowland, who signed with Mahindra Racing after Alex Lynn departed Formula E. Also heading to the United States, racing a Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac DPI and IMSA competition. With the departure of Audi, Lucas Degrassi chose to stay in Formula E, signing with Rocket Venturi Racing. Degrassi's former Audi Formula E teammate Rene Rast opted not to return to the series, instead choosing to make DTM his main program. Last but not least, American Oliver Askew steps away from IndyCar, going full-time Formula E racing with Andretti Autosport, the same team he won the 2019 Indy Lights Championship with. Askew becomes the first American driver to commit to a full Formula E season, so expect a lot more viewers watching in the United States. To prepare for the season, Formula E had testing in Valencia, and now it's time to go racing in Saudi Arabia. Ed, based on what you know about all of the changes over the offseason and the testing results from Valencia, who are the main drivers and teams we need to watch to kick off Season 8?
Well, because there's been obviously, as you know, the powertrain freeze from Season 7 due to COVID. So all the powertrains are pretty much the same as the ones introduced either at the start of Season 7 or in some cases of some teams like Nissan introduced a new powertrain in the middle of Season 7. And they've all got to stick with the ones they introduced then. So in terms of the competitive order, you wouldn't expect too many dramatic changes. Like I wouldn't expect, say, for instance, Dragon or Neo 333 to suddenly be fighting for wins at the very front of the field. there were a couple of interesting predictions on our Formula E Zone show that Jack Giordano made that I sort of dismissed as kind of fantasy and dreamland, that they'd be fighting for wins and podiums. But to be fair, I think I'm not sure if he's been being entirely serious on that. And as you say, the big Audi and BMW leaving, but of course maintaining a presence. So effectively, Envision Racing, which used to be Envision Virgin, it's now just Envision, with Virgin having left the team essentially. Envision are effectively the main Audi team with the absence of Audi, and of course, Andretti also with BMW leaving, they're just reusing the BMW powertrains, because there wasn't really, you can't really, even though BMW are gone, it would have been a bit unfair to leave them in the lurch. So they're sort of both looking for a new partnership for Gen 3, of course, which is going to be season 9, the season after. But as you say, the big changes coming in the form of the drivers. Giovinazzi, a big name, as you say, Italian Jesus going electric. And the big news, of course, in Gen 3 coming on is the arrival of Maserati, which a lot of people have linked Antonio Giovinazzi to, because he has big links with Ferrari's young driver program. Ferrari, Maserati, both owned by the Agnelli family, so big links there. And Giovinazzi very keen to cultivate that link, but of course focusing on his season with Dragon. And it's a sort of, we'll see how we do sort of thing for him. There'll be a lot of people interested to see how our long-haired Italian friend gets on in Formula E when he makes his debut. And the Dragon certainly showed some form in qualifying last season, but the big changes, which we'll be talking about in a bit, it's going to be probably a bit harder for him to make an impact. And a similar story for Dan Ticktum, a slightly controversial name, seems to tend to court controversy with some of his off-track statements, but a very quick driver on the track and looking to redeem us. It reminds me a lot, in fact, of Nelson Piquet Jr., who joined the same team. Back then it was called Team China Racing. It's now called Neo 333. But Piquet joined the team ahead of the first season of Formula E in the wake of Crashgate and a bunch of difficult periods in NASCAR where he was getting into fights and stuff like that. And he had an amazing Formula E debut season in the first season of Formula E and won the whole championship by a point from Sebastian Buemi. I don't see Dan Ticktum doing quite as well, but I certainly think if he can match what Tom Blomqvist did, score a few points